individual sessions from various long-term cares, but really everybody shares the same concern, which is how do we staff the sector, how do we staff our homes, how do we provide the level of care to our clients, and how do we ensure that we're in line with what needs to be done to operate a long-term care home. So under this particular forum, the cooperative is an established group of the long-term care homes sharing that common vision and unified under that. And that is really a victory for an event like this, is to bring these people together and to do something along those lines. As well, this is an opportunity to kind of speak to some of the training opportunities that are available in long-term care, which may be a misconception. You can come into long-term care and have access to the training that's going to allow you to develop your career within the long-term care settings. And that's the tie-in with Lambton College, wherein we have a number of different programs available and some flexible education opportunities that allow you to work while you're getting the training that's necessary to be successful in your career. Similarly, this is also the opportunity to talk about kind of the logistics about how your experience within starting in a role in long-term care is going to happen. And part of that is dealing with the issues of HR orientation and the prospects of a passport and centralization of these training records that mean you have the opportunity to get on the floor faster, do the job that you want to do faster, and have that capacity to move between homes and see your training recognized via the digital passport. This standardization is really an important piece that's been pushed by the provincial government and supported by the provincial government through the Micro-Credential Challenge Fund, which we're going to speak to later on as well. So with that, I will take it away, let Claudette take it away in one split second. It's an open concept venue in the sense of people are coming and going to the talks that they would like to see or have an interest in. You're not expected to stay. Just make your way in, grab some food, enjoy yourself. The Dante Club has some fantastic food. Get what you can out of it, and there will be some opportunities to have a conversation with the speakers after each of their sessions, which will not be recorded and live streamed. This event is also live streamed in terms of the presentations for people that are not available, as well as recorded, such that it becomes a resource for the sector as a whole. So with that, thank you and enjoy. And so the first session is what exactly is long-term care? Find out what it's like to work in the long-term care sector, and that's being provided by Claudette Liddick.
Thank you, Sandy, and welcome everyone. I'm so happy to see you all. Long-term care is something that is hidden from your thoughts unless you need it one day. And then you find that your parent or loved one is in need of care and service, and so you start looking for long-term care. Also, if you're in the field of nursing, traditionally there is an idea that it is a nursing home facility. We don't use the word facility anymore because long-term care is a home for the elderly primarily, but not just seniors or geriatrics. There's also people who are younger and maybe need some assistance with their activities of daily living. So I'll get the next slide, please. So this is kind of a definition that I made up. It's not something that I took off the internet or anything, but long-term care home is for people who require supportive care. And what's supportive care? Well, most of the time it is people who are, for whatever reason, it could be Alzheimer's disease, it could be a stroke, it could be different things like muscular dystrophy, or some things where they lose their physical or mental ability to safely care for themselves. So we in long-term care make it our mission to make sure that the person is safe and feels like they're at home and that they're loved and cared for. So we'll go to the next slide. I have more to talk about. Long-term care is different than other sectors, and the reason they're different is because when people move into long-term care, they're there for a very long period of time. That's why we kind of moved away from the word facility. because it's home. And that's where the Ministry of Long-Term Care is really talking about it being a home. So when we are partially funded through the Ministry of Long-Term Care, and so we have a lot of accountability to them. Sometimes you see in the media lots of bad stories about long-term care, and we have lots and lots and millions, I'm going to say, of good stories about long-term care. Primarily relationships. Relationships between the staff, relationships between the residents and their families, relationships between volunteers, and even our contractors and support services. They come to the home every day to bring oxygen, or they come to the home every day to do lab work, and they start to get to know everybody. It's a wonderful opportunity for relationships. And in fact, the staff who work there for long periods of time grieve with the families when there's loss. There is a sense of becoming part of the family when you're in long-term care. And you do start to love people deeply. And that's a loss for us when they are finally going to the next journey of their life in death. So it is a challenging environment. It's not for the faint of heart, because the PSW, for example, has to do a lot of heavy work. We really, in long-term care with the government's support, have been able to purchase different machines that help to move people safely and with dignity. And when I say dignity, that is because a lot of losses when a resident comes to the home, and we try to provide care in a dignified way and with confidentiality. So it is challenging for the staff, but one thing that we are fortunate for and also challenged by is the Ministry of Long-Term Care new act, which is the Fixing Long-Term Care Homes Act, introduced in 2022. And so there is lots of documentation, you can look it up on the internet, of all the things that long-term care is required to do, including reporting. So we are inspected. The inspections happen at least annually, and we're inspected with surprise visits. So there is a reporting system that we have to follow as well, and if there's any concerns, we are inspected and we get reports. And those reports are publicly posted. So you can also look that up. Team approach and resident-centered care is really where we want to go. And when we talk about team approach, I've been in long-term care for 40 years. When I first started, you could see in the environment that there were silos of people, silos of nursing, silos of the recreation department, the dietary department, and everybody had their territory, and we were not encouraged to work together. But today it's magnificent. We do work together. We talk to each other. We share information. An example that is wonderful is a housekeeper who visits a resident room and learns things that nobody else knows and can share it with the team. One example of this is a lady that never spoke at all, ever, during meals, during bed care, everything. But when the housekeeper came in whistling and cleaning and saying hello, she spoke. And we were shocked. We knew that she couldn't speak. So the team approach is really important, talking to each other. And I think all nursing homes will, and long-term care homes will, encourage that teamwork. Home-like atmosphere, that is the challenge. So in the old days, the seniors were always afraid to go into long-term care. It's the end of the line. Not anymore. Now there are opportunities for the residents. We have computers for them. We have opportunities to be educated. We have vans that take them on all kinds of trips, fishing. It's not the end of the line anymore. And in fact, sometimes people will come to us and get rehabilitated and move to a lower level of care. And then they perhaps have another opportunity. So really investigate those homes that you're working at or looking to work at, and ask them about whether or not they are promoting the home-like atmosphere with resident-centered care. There are so many opportunities. I was just talking to a few of our folks here in the audience. Opportunities are numerous, and in every category of position. So for example, if you don't have a post-secondary education or grade 12, that you need a job, there is housekeeping and there is laundry services, and you can use any background information that you have. For example, if you studied WMIS, or if you have worked in an industry where there's chemicals used, that's all very positive on your resume if you're going to be a housekeeper or a laundry person. I'm going to be talking about positions later on, but it goes everywhere from laundry all the way to executive positions. In our home where I work, I started out in recreation. I was supported by my employer to get my Bachelor of Arts degree. I was invited to be part of growth within the company, and I have stayed with that company for 40 years because of the opportunities, because of the home-like atmosphere, because of the team approach, because of the relationships. It's a wonderful, wonderful opportunity for people. And we'll talk about rewards. Rewards are multiple. First of all, personal. On a personal level, your rewards is job satisfaction, especially when you can leave the environment and say, I've done a good job, and look back at the people that you touched that day and talked to that day. That's the most important thing. The other rewards are, we have in our home rewards such as opportunities for education. We have an education fund that if you are working for us for a period of time and you come in as a PSW, for example, we will provide funding for you to go to RPN or from RPN to RN. There are some policies and procedures around that, and the rewards those policies and procedures outline those rewards, and the staff members have access to that. Other rewards that we have in our particular environment is service awards, so that the longer you stay, the higher of the award you get. And of course, you become a mentor for the new employees. So there's lots of rewards and opportunities. Personally, my reward has been the family of my workplace, the friends that I've made, the people that I have touched lives with in my care, and the opportunity to develop my skills. So it really has been a wonderful career for me, and I'm really excited for anyone looking for a career in long-term care. Next slide. I wanted to find a quote that really kind of wraps it up, and I'm not sure if there's further things that I can say, but I could say lots of stuff. Caring about others, running the risk of feeling, and leaving an impact on people brings happiness. That's really a personal mantra of mine, because this career path is really the people to people. We've often thought that careers in other industries where you're not working with people is higher paid. And a lot of people look for those types of occupations because of the higher pay. But the reward personally and professionally in long-term care is very self-motivating. So I have one other slide, I think that's my end slide, and I would like to just sort of thank everyone for the opportunity, and I'm just looking to see if my time is getting close. And I would like to offer myself for any questions that you might have with regards to the long-term care industry. And I will be back today for a couple more sessions. And I thank you very much for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the long-term care home industry.
Thank you, Claudette, and we'll just pause for a second before the next session starts. Thank you. Welcome back, and thank you. So next we have Claudette Leduc speaking again on careers in long-term care. There are many more opportunities than you think. Claudette, thank you.
Thank you, Sandy, and welcome to all the new people that joined us today. I'm so delighted to be able to share with you all the opportunities that you can do just from one sector. So there, of course, in the world, there's lots and lots of jobs, but people are not necessarily aware of the many, many opportunities for people in long-term care sector. So let's go to the next slide and we'll get started. So this is a picture of all the different areas of opportunities for the different types of positions. So for example, at the top, it's your left corner, is the RPN. So the RPN is usually the unit lead in long-term care. And as the unit lead, she is providing direction to the team of PSWs and others on the team. So that is generally the idea that people have for the RPN in long-term care. However, there are so many more opportunities for an RPN in long-term care sector. For example, when the government introduced the resident assessment instrument, which is an assessment that's done on long-term care home clients, a very extensive assessment, the sector needed resident assessment instrument coordinators, and we call them RI coordinators. And RI coordinators are responsible for coordinating all the assessments and ensuring that they are submitted to the government for not only statistics and not only for determining levels of care, but also they use it for our funding model. So, and additionally, they use that information for when they come and do inspections, so they can see whether or not our falls are high, our wounds are low, that type of thing. So it's a very interesting assessment that collects a lot of data. And the registered practical nurse is usually one of those people who does that job. Another example, there's several examples up there, and that poster is downstairs, you can look, but I'll do one more example. Currently, we have an RPN in our home as the quality improvement lead. So she is really the person who takes a look at all of the data and brings it to the attention of the other managers. And when the other managers see the data, they say, oh, this quality improvement has improved our stats on continence. So if they were working on a quality improvement for continence, you can measure the data and see the improvement. Or sometimes you see that there's something going wrong or a red flag. So an RPN has the expertise to actually take that role. Further on, there is life enrichment, for example. And in nursing homes or homes for the aged, they are all different titles, but they do virtually the same thing. So it can be a life enrichment aide, it can be a recreation therapist, it can be called also a recreation facilitator or an activity director. In my day, when I first started, it was activity director. So life enrichment has a lot of opportunities as well. They, in the life enrichment category, there's social work, there's physiotherapy aides, there's also life enrichment aides as well. I'm not going to go through all of these positions because I have further slides that break it down more. But this is the demonstration of the multitude of opportunities in long-term care. So depending on what your heart's desire is, or your background, or what you're studying, these are the areas that will give you opportunities. So let's break it down a little bit. Can I have the next slide, please? So professional opportunities. It's an interesting thing because my boss, years and years ago, said that the word professional is used very loosely in our world because professional people study and get a degree and they get recognized by a professional body. For example, a doctor gets a degree in medical work. I'm not thinking of the terminology right away. And so he has to be registered with his profession, and so he has a professional title. So in this talk, I wanted to separate the professionals who require to be registered with their college or their professional body. So let's look at some of these examples. The registered nurse needs to have a license with RNAO, or the CNO, excuse me, the Canadian Nursing Organization. Social work, if it's an MSW or an SSW, also has to be registered with that professional. The administrator has to have a BSN or a degree in order to be an administrator of a nursing home. They also need to have certification through a educational institution to actually be an administrator of long-term care. The physiotherapist, of course, has to have a degree in physiotherapy. A nurse practitioner is a registered nurse with an extended class, so they are a profession. For the physician, we talked about. The dietitian, also a very grueling course, but also has a professional body. A chief financial officer will have to have a master's in finance and be a higher level of education. Your executive director would normally have some type of degree in business, nursing, or other. And then your registered practical nurse also has a professional body. So if you're looking at these positions in long-term care, these are the positions that hold a professional body. Let's go to the next slide. So in long-term care, we do have lots of managers, and not all managers have degrees, but all managers definitely would have a diploma in their area of expertise. And we often, especially in this world where there's not a lot of bodies, will look at similar diplomas to fill positions, and if you have experience working in an environment in that type of role. So food service manager is in charge of all of the menus and the food ordering and overseeing the dietary department. And they normally would have a 2-year college background in food service management. Human resource manager is the person who hires, the person who counsels employees, the person who does WSIB claims, all different kinds of responsibilities, and there's a diploma in human resource management for that. The program service manager, that word can be different in different homes. It could be the manager of life enrichment or the manager of recreation services, and that person needs a diploma or degree in recreation or gerontology. It's kind of expanded a little bit because the recreation program at the college level has offered different focus areas. And so you can take a diploma or degree of recreation that's focused on gerontology, for example. However, we wouldn't limit that. If you had a diploma in recreation and you, say, studied arena management, but you had experience working with the recreation field, we would definitely take a look at your resume and perhaps get an interview there. Director of care is generally a diploma, but more these days a degree in nursing, so they would need a BSN, and manager experience, very important. You have to be able to direct. That's the biggest department in long-term care, is the nursing department, and the director of care is the coordinator of all that. The RILE we talked about has to be a registered person, so RPNs are often that position. Quality improvement coordinator, again, a college degree in a related field, and if you have experience working with quality improvement initiatives. The other thing is if you have education with the LEAN program, which is a very good program to take as well. Environmental services manager, again, that person is in charge of the housekeeping, laundry, areas of the home, and a little bit of maintenance, but they have really got experience with managing people, because it is a larger department as well. And often the homes will have an assistant RN or a assistant director of care. We call it at our home a nurse manager, and she assists the director of care. She's normally a registered nurse. Let's go to the next slide. Non-professional positions. So these positions don't, they're positions that you come with a diploma or degree often, but I'll go through them because not all of them have that. So the receptionist is really the person who is the face of the home. The person you see when you first walk in, she's going to direct you. She's going to answer phones. She may do some clerical work for some of the managers. She has to interact with residents, so the seniors, so she has to be able to talk to the residents and talk to the family members. So you really want someone who's friendly and has some experience with clerical. The accounting position has a higher level of education because, of course, they're doing the books, the budget for the CEO. They go over all of the bills. They send out bills for the families to pay their rent and make sure everything is on there, and spend a lot of time balancing books and sending out payroll, things like that. So there is a diploma or degree requirement for the accounting. Payroll can be an assistant to the accounting supervisor, but also needs some background in finance. The executive secretary assistant is not always at all long-term care homes. It depends on the size. Long-term care homes can be big corporations, or they can be single homes, and some single homes are only 60 residents living in. Other homes, like our home, has 146. So this position is helpful to support the management team with minutes and with organizing data and information, doing tours, answering information on the phone. Very helpful and very knowledgeable. They usually have a diploma or a diploma in clerical and that sort of thing. Sorry, I'm stumbling. Human resource assistant we have, and this person is knowledgeable about scheduling, is knowledgeable about call-ins, is also knowledgeable about employee records, how they are to be filed, what the Ministry of Long-Term Care requires us for our human resource information, and of course privacy legislation. Scheduler staff call-ins is an extremely challenging job, and that's because you're always trying to fill shifts. And what you're doing is calling people and saying, can you work this shift? Can you work this shift? And they have to be very patient and kind to the staff, because if you're kind to the staff, perhaps they will say, yes, I'll cover that shift for you and no problem. So we really appreciate our schedulers in this industry. Laundry aides work, the poor laundry aides are usually down in the laundry area, and I say down because in our home it's down, but it might not necessarily be. And they don't really have a lot of contact with our residents or staff, except that they do all their personal laundry. So they know their names and they have to sort that laundry so that that laundry goes out to the right person. The education level here is grade top 12 or experience. We're very open to training people here. The other thing is the housekeeper as well. Housekeeper needs to be informed about infection control practices. They are very, very important for sanitizing and keeping everything clean. And you know, the housekeeper makes the biggest, helps to make the impression of the home. If the housekeeper isn't cleaning the home, the very first thing people look at and say, oh, this home is dirty, and they turn off. So a housekeeper is a very vital position as well. And maintenance. Can never minimize maintenance, maintenance of the building. You don't want it to get old, so there's opportunities in maintenance. Not only, you really have to have a knowledge of the systems, like the electrical system, the plumbing system, the ventilation system, all of that sort of thing is helpful if you paint and carpentry. However, at our home, we do offer employment to people who can assist in maintenance, because sometimes these buildings are huge and it's very, very difficult to keep up with the new standards that the ministry made about the size of rooms and homes, which is wonderful, but it is hard to maintain. I think we have one more slide, because there's more non-professional positions. Now, the personal support worker, they do have a body that they can talk to and register with, but they are not yet professional body. I'm going to go quickly through. Personal care aid it provides personal care items to the resident one-on-one. Behavior supports is supporting dementia care. Life enrichment, under the coordinator, there's several people who do recreation and activities. Physiotherapy aides work under the physiotherapist. A volunteer coordinator is a very vital position to recruit volunteers, which homes really do need. The cook has to be a Red Seal cook. We have to have one in the home and the others with cooking experience. And the dietary aides, which need the food service worker certificate. So I ran through that fast because I'm running out of time, but I'm going to be available to answer any of your questions on any of these positions. And I think my last slide says thank you. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Claudette. We'll pause for 2 minutes and be back at 1:15 for the next speaker. Thank you. Excellent, welcome back. Thank you very much. Next we have Heather Martin, and she's going to talk to us today about Earn While You Learn. Get your food service or personal support worker certificate while you work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sandy, and welcome everyone. Thank you for coming out today to this job fair with Lambton College and Sarnia-Lambton Economic Partnership. I'm here to talk about the wonderful opportunities in a diversity of ways that we can find our way into long-term care. The personal support worker and food service worker programs have been offered at Lambton College for a number of years and have been essential for us being able to staff our long-term care homes. So During the pandemic, we had a crisis in staffing in long-term care. That's no secret. And we experienced it here in Sarnia as much as anywhere else in the province or the world. So at that time, we brought several individuals into the home that were willing to assist us in staffing our home as the PSW and food service worker pool became depleted with individuals that remained at home during the pandemic. We still had residents to care for. So at Vision Nursing Home, we saw an opportunity to offer education through virtual learning for the resident support aides. We wouldn't have gotten through it without them. They gave their heart and their love to our residents, so we wanted to say thank you to them as a way of bringing them into our home permanently. Unfortunately, the ministry stopped funding the RSA positions, as we call them, and so without the funding, those individuals would have been laid off. So we asked them, what would you like to do, and would you like to join us permanently? So we looked at the RSAs, and I was quite surprised. We had 24 at the time, and out of the 24, I think we had 17 that were interested in continuing their education to be able to become permanent employees at Vision. Some of them were in the late phases of their working careers and weren't interested necessarily in starting a new job, new employment. And a few of them are still with us as we work our way through the transition. So Lambton College is very innovative and creative, and I'm just so thankful to be a part of their community. They got the micro-credentialing program for persons interested in the food service worker and personal care aide, the PSW program. So we offered our support to the employees. It was our way of saying thank you to them for being with us during the 2 very difficult years. So today, we're after a year and a half, we started in May last year. We're about to graduate our first food service workers, and 3 of them. And we also have 8 PSWs that are nearing completion of the micro-credentials. Next slide, please. We also, in order to achieve this, we found that learning outside of the classroom is different for everyone, and not all of us are independent learners or can make our way through that. So we are very fortunate that we had an on-site mentor, a registered practical nurse, who is just magic. She'll jump in and take on projects with us and assist us in any way. She also had previously taught at Lambton College in a program, so she had the skill set, and so what she does is she works with these individuals on a regular basis, and we have set up a classroom style environment so that a couple of times a week the students, the PSWs and food service worker students, are able to meet with her at set times. She helps to facilitate their learning, working around their skill sets. Some of these individuals, there's a couple that I can think of that are single moms, have children at home, and are keenly interested in getting into full-time employment in their future, but found it very difficult at home trying to manage all those balls. So those are the types of people that we can certainly assist in achieving success, their success, which ultimately becomes our success. So we did set up a dedicated space. We purchased computers for them to use at work, and they can come in on their off time, and we pay them. So if you need assistance with education, come on in and we'll sign you up, and we'll pay your wages while you're at Vision learning. So in addition to that, we've accepted the responsibility for the cost of the course and the program. So that takes the financial burden away from individuals too that certainly may have chosen not to take the course or do the program without our support. This is definitely creating a work experience in the field of their choice. As you can see, it certainly is a win-win situation. The employees taking the micro-credential courses are engaged and have been extremely excited about having the opportunity and having somebody that cares about them in such a grand way. We've got a pool of enthusiastic employees that will come May, I believe, but will be finished. It'll be wonderful. So we'll have 3 food service workers they're already employed doing dietary aid work. They'll now be certified, which is a requirement under the Ministry of Long-Term Care in the regulations. The PSWs that we have, the 8 that are in the course, We retained the title of an RSA, the Resident Support Aide, and will transition over into the PSW permanent pool of employees as soon as they are certified. So again, that is a regulated field for the Ministry of Health in their regulations. So we've also found that there are still a few employees that are working for us in the non-regulated classes, as Claudette had mentioned. We have other dietary aides, food service, housekeeping and laundry staff and maintenance that have shown interest in both PSW and the food service worker program. So we are opening up that opportunity to do another intake of individuals. We think we have 2 or 3 more. And I think what's most important about this is the commitment that we've shown to them. And through our internal policy, because it's a fairly significant financial commitment, that these employees have agreed to stay on with us for a year post-graduation. So we get full-time employment from them. And I think it would be difficult for us to see them leave, and I think it would be difficult for them to leave after such a relationship has developed. It's an excellent opportunity for employers to recruit from within the organization, from the pool of employees that are perhaps seeking career changes. We also have PSWs, a little bit different to this, that are also taking the RPN, the Registered Practical Nurse program, on their own. There are some financial incentives for them to do that. So as an employer, we can offer them employment around their school time and their schedules. So, well, that's it. And it's kind of short and sweet, but I think what I think the message is most importantly is that it's not just a student's responsibility to seek out employers, but it's also our responsibility to find employees and then groom them to fit the culture of the home. And all of us act and behave in different ways in different employers. We, being a nonprofit charitable nursing home, probably are a little bit more flexible and creative about our approaches to trying to stabilize our workforce, which is wonderful. And through some of the relationships we've developed also with Lambton College, we've expanded that. So I would be pleased to take any questions. It was short and sweet, wasn't it? Okay. Okay, thank you, Sandy.
Thank you very much, Heather. So we'll take a pause for until the next one at 1:30, and then we'll move. Thank you. you, and welcome back. Next in line, we have John Rose, and he's going to be speaking on flexible education. Micro-credentials let you fit school around your life instead of fitting your life around school. Can we talk?
Thank you. Hi, everybody. So my name's John. I work in the online education department at Lambton College, and one of the things that we really want to highlight, particularly for the long-term care industry, is that there are lots of opportunities for folks to upskill without having to kind of stop out from work, go into a full-time program, that kind of thing. And so micro-credentials are a big part of that, so I'm going to be talking about that today. So next slide, please. So what's a micro-credential? One of those things that probably you've heard the term thrown around, and it's like, I'm not exactly sure what that is. So micro-credentials are short-duration, competency-based courses that focus on the acquisition and demonstration of specific skills. What do we mean by that? Basically, when you think about a traditional course that you would have taken in college, 4 months long, tackles a number of different skills. The way that micro-credentials work instead is that each one's going to focus on one specific skill, and the idea is that you demonstrate mastery of that. And that leads to a couple of advantages. So the first thing is that you can study the content you want in the order you choose. In other words, there's not prerequisites. You don't have to take this before that. You just work through in whatever way you want. And flexibility, they start every month because they're shorter. They're only 4 weeks long. And self-paced learning, meaning if you can take 2 this month, that's great. If next month's busy, don't do one, and whatever, right? You just kind of, as it says, make it fit around your life. Credit for existing skills. This is a piece that's really important and I think is not always clear to everybody. Because these are competency-based, you just have to demonstrate mastery of that competency. I know how to do this. Well, the way these are structured, the assessment that you do it when you feel ready. So if on day 1 you're ready to be assessed, be assessed. If you want to take a whole month to review the material, do that. What this means is we often have people who maybe they didn't get that credential, they didn't finish their college program, or they've got a bunch of experiential learning, but in the eyes of traditional education, you're 1 credit short of a credential and you kind of don't have anything. The way that this works is you've been working, you know how to do stuff, great. Take a micro-credential, demonstrate the competency. You can do it on day 1, good. You've got that credit now for that competency. So the other piece about the flexibility is you can start out just doing the stuff you already know, kind of get all of that in the bank, and then move on to the new content that you need. And eventually you can work your way all the way through to, say, a food service worker or a personal support worker Ontario certificate. The other thing too, pay as you go. So micro-credentials are not super expensive. They're usually sort of $100 to $250. You're just paying at the time you register, so it's not like you've got to come up with $5,000 in tuition all at once. Pay as you go. And then it can scale up. So for employers, if employers have a bunch of folks who they need to say, I know there are situations, for instance, in long-term care where now the government says everybody who's doing this role needs to have this credential, right? How do we get folks through this while they're still working? Well, we have some of our corporate partners who register their folks through corporate training, and then the idea is that they provide a certain amount of support. There's kind of structure to the way that they're doing that within the day or the week. And an employer can move a whole bunch of people relatively quickly through to, say, food service worker or personal support worker certification without some massive disruption either to the individual employees or just kind of like your staffing schedule or all those sorts of things. One important point as well with this whole idea of you have to demonstrate competency, the level for doing that, the standard for doing that is higher. It's an 85% rather than the traditional 50 or 60%. But for every assessment, you get 2 opportunities. We're not looking for reasons to fail people. The idea is that you can go through, do the content, you try the assessment, and then you realize, oh, I wasn't quite as ready for that as I thought. I didn't reach that standard. That's fine. You're going to get feedback, and you have another opportunity to do it again. So it's also kind of not quite as high stakes from the perspective that you do get a second chance at every assessment. Next slide, please. So, with competency-based education, right, and a combination of observable and measurable knowledge, skills, abilities, or personal attributes. So the idea is that these are all things that you can demonstrate, right? Whatever the competency is, the micro-credentials and the assessments are always arranged in a way where you can quite clearly show that you know how to do them, whether immediately or after some study. And There's a combination where some of them are more like job specific or vocational skills, some of them are more soft skills, communications, things like that. So it isn't just very technical things, there are those soft skill pieces that are obviously very important as well. Long-term care, right? Dealing with clients, understanding people, interpersonal skills, those things are also in there as well. Next slide. And basically, the thing is that, for instance, with food service worker or with personal support worker, there are also the traditional programs. And so a question to get is like, how do these two things kind of connect together? Or maybe I have a few credits from the program, but I had to stop out for whatever reason. The way that the micro-credentials are designed, they map onto those full courses. So if somebody has, say, a couple of full courses, we can then say, oh, okay, you already have this set of micro-credentials because they have the same outcomes. Or conversely, maybe if somebody starts out in micro-credentials and then for some reason decides that they want to move into the more traditional program, they're mapped in that direction as well. And often there are both in-class and online versions available. So there's a great deal of flexibility. And again, this goes through a lot of what I've already said, but you can do standalone pieces. So you may be in a role where maybe you don't need the whole food service worker program, but there are 3 or 4 micro-credentials that your boss says, well, we'd really like you to have this. Micro-credentials, because they're broken down the way they are, that's no problem, just take those. There's no obligation on your part to take or not take anything. You kind of put it together in whatever way works for you. And if you only need a chunk of it now, and you're gonna need another chunk of it later, do the chunk you need now you're working, and you can continue to fill in those other gaps to maybe be able to move up or move on in your career. Next slide, please. There are 2 types of micro-credential. We've got the professional development ones, and those are like your more traditional kind of corporate training sort of a thing. And then what I'm referring to is ladderable. Basically what that means is those are the ones that count for credit toward, say, a certificate or something like that. Those are the ones that you can put together into larger credentials. Next slide. And so you see here that someone can get a handful of micro-credentials. Micro-credentials can come together in a micro-certificate, and you can think of that as kind of a larger skill set. So maybe from food service worker, you've taken a few different things, and now those micro-credentials come together as a certificate that's like menu planning or something like that, that you've pulled those skills together. So the other really nice thing is that, yes, you can eventually get that Ontario College certificate, but there's not that sort of no man's land of, I have a couple of courses or I have the full credential. There's this middle piece of micro-certificates that really brings skill sets together in a way that both you and a potential employer can understand. Next slide. In terms of those certificate programs, because there are lots of micro-credentials that don't lead to a full certificate, but certainly relevant to long-term care, there are a couple in particular that we do see a lot of folks go through. You've got food service worker and personal support worker, so those are traditional 1-year certificates that students can do full-time. You can get exactly the same certificate doing them through micro-credentials. As it says here, you can do them while you're working, right? They're really designed very much to have that flexibility where you're working shifts, no problem. There's no specific time during the day or the week that you need to log in. It's just a set of tasks and learning and assessments that you work through. There's a certain responsibility as a learner to kind of impose some structure so that you get through it in time, but you make that work around your life. And then as mentioned before with corporate training, for those employers who have kind of a larger group of people that they want to run through this, there are lots of opportunities, and in fact it can even reduce some of their costs if they can provide some support for their employees while they're doing it. And so, for instance, one of our corporate training partners, they kind of have three hours each week on different days that folks can come together in the boardroom and get some support and kind of work through the material, so it's very woven into their workday. Next slide, please. So for personal support workers specifically, this is the micro-credential stream. There's 25 online micro-credentials, so students, again, can do those kind of things. You don't have to wait, come on in, it's fine. The sandwiches, they're awesome. And then there's 7 hands-on labs, and those are generally done over the course of 2 weekends. The only thing that we do recommend that students do those online ones first and then do the hands-on stuff at the end, just because then you've kind of got all that theory. And then there are 2 field placements. The one other thing to be aware of is there is one general elective. So just as if you were a student taking a full-time program, there is going to be that one gen ed. Often we have folks coming back who've had some other education, they've already got that. it's fine then. You don't have to do one again if there's already one on your transcript. And if you did it somewhere else, you can transfer it to Lambton College. That's totally fine. Next slide. Food service worker, similar, it's a little bit shorter, 20 online micro-credentials, 1 hands-on micro-credential lab, 1 field placement, and then again the general elective. One other thing to be aware of is that with the labs and the field placements, if people are already working, there are opportunities to work through that material in terms of if you've got someone who's already doing the work, then it's possible for the employer to kind of work through a process where that lab is delivered remotely at their workplace instead of having to come to us. Or in some cases, there's even opportunities for what we call an attestation, where essentially someone who's sort of qualified to do so says, oh, okay, well, all of this stuff this person is already doing in their work, and then they don't have to go through and do it again. We just need that attestation that, like, yeah, they've shown these competencies already in the workplace. So again, great deal of flexibility. Next slide. Admission requirements. For those Ontario graduate certificates, somebody does need their high school diploma, the same that you do coming into a full-time program. 2 things to be aware of, though. Number 1, if somebody doesn't have that, there is mature student testing. So there is another way to meet that requirement. The other thing that's important is that with part-time programs, you just have to show that you're eligible when you graduate. Because, as we said before, some people might only want to take 1 or 2, 3 micro-credentials. They don't have to meet these requirements. They only have to meet these requirements when they say, hey, I would like to graduate and get my actual credential. So one of the nice things is somebody can be working their way through this content, working their way through the certificate, and also if they want to simultaneously, through the Adult Learning Center or through mature student testing, meet that requirement. You don't have to have it before you start, you just have to have it before you finish. And the general elective, as I mentioned, if you've already got one, it moves over, you don't have to do it again. If not, then that's one of those things that you just need to factor into that period of time when you're going through the program. Next slide. One other thing that we have this is sort of more on that professional development side that I was talking about before. This is not connected to a certificate program, but we have lots of what we call add-ons. And this is basically for somebody who's already working in long-term care in whatever role. Hi, come on in.
I was looking for Kyle Walker.
Oh, he's downstairs. Yeah.
Thank you.
There are, as you move along, so you may remember, for those of you who've been here since the beginning, Claudette was showing that big map with all these different roles and stuff, and some of them are like kind of the next step up, right? So you've been working already as an RN or a PSW or in food service or whatever, and then there's kind of this next level, right? Well, how do I get up to there? Add-ons are a really great way to do that. They're basically these sets of micro-credentials we've got that can help somebody with, for instance, additional kind of stuff in client care beyond what you would have learned in your PSW. And once somebody's got a certain amount of experience, then this is an opportunity to kind of go deeper or learn more. Communication skills, if you're dealing with clients, right? That once you've kind of got a certain amount of experience, then again, there's that ability to learn a little bit more professional development, go a little bit deeper. Regulatory compliance and safety. So these are things that you don't necessarily cover a whole lot about sort of regulations and stuff when you're doing your initial program. You learn some of it, but this is an opportunity to do more. Or let's say the regulations change. The ministry says, hey, it's not like that now, it's like this. We have those micro-credentials in place for people to be able to stay current. Computer and technology skills. You may have somebody who started out, say, in a client-facing role, and then they're moving into a role where they're managing, or they're doing stuff where, okay, I didn't have to know how to use Microsoft Office before, but now I do. Those sorts of things can help in those kinds of transitions from one role to another. And also things like even for human resources folks and stuff, because you may have people, one of the key focuses today has been, hey, long-term care is not just client care. We need maintenance people, we need management people, we need clerical people, we need all these different folks. But people coming from these other areas haven't necessarily learned anything specific to this sector. The add-ons, so for instance, someone in human resources needs to know a little bit more. How does human resources work in this sector? There are opportunities to build up those kinds of skills as well. So the add-ons are a really great way for people to kind of spread out and go a little further and go a little deeper. Next slide. And yeah, I believe that's it. So lambtoncollege.ca/micro-credentials, you can see all of the micro-credentials that we currently offer, and obviously our contact info is there. Anybody's got any questions about any of the stuff I've talked about today, online at lambtoncollege.ca. All of us check that email address, and we're happy to answer any questions you've got. All right. Hope you're enjoying your day. Definitely have some sandwiches. They're awesome. Take care.
Thank you very much, John. So at this point, we'll take a short break, and then we will be back at 2:10 for the next round of talks. Thanks a bunch. All right, thank you very much. Welcome back. And next we have Claudette Leduc with jobs in the healthcare sector. What are the differences between the working in long-term care, retirement homes, and hospitals? Claudette?
Thank you, Sandy, and welcome everyone. And it's so nice to see new faces and meet new faces. This is an exciting topic. The healthcare sector is very broad. So when you talk about the healthcare sector and you look at the broad workings of the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Long-Term Care, there is a lot of opportunities. But a lot of people don't know that there's differences in how and the ways that you work in the different sectors within the health sector. So let's talk a little bit about that. Next slide, please. So if you're employed by a hospital, and that's a hospital here in Ontario and Canada, there are different legislations from province to province. And not all hospitals have all of these opportunities for work. A hospital is usually an acute place you go where you are having an illness or you need some care or surgery or so on and so forth. It's an institution. There's lots of patient treatment. Usually you're there short term. There's very few long-term placements in the hospital. However, there are some, for example, in chronic care, which I have listed there. Chronic care really is a place where mostly it's elderly people whose care is beyond the scope of a long-term care home or in the other health sectors. So they would be staying and living at the hospital. It's not the most ideal situation, but hospitals make it as nice as possible. So in that chronic care particularly, they would have PSWs and RPNs and recreation staff, of course, and housekeeping, all kinds of different opportunities. So let's talk about the hospital and the other services that they offer. There are intensive care units where highly trained nurses take care of people who are critically ill. Emergency care services, many of us have experienced that. If you have not had access to your doctor in the middle of the night, you might go to emergency services. Very specialized care there as well, and there is a triage, usually in emergency care, where they triage you to, based on the severity of your illness when you arrive. Also, hospitals have a surgery usually. Surgeons will do all kinds of different surgeries, and your stay will be for a few days up to several weeks, depending on the surgery. Rehabilitation often is visited by people who have had a stroke or perhaps a major break and they need rehabilitation to get stronger. They'll stay on that unit until they can move on to the next level in the health sector. Or home. Telemetry, there's stroke and cardiac care, and it is available to, of course, after people have strokes or telemetry. And again, it's a short stay. Cardiac care is also a very specialized unit for heart problems and heart surgeries, heart monitoring. Palliative care is for end-of-life care in the hospital. There are also hospices that provide that particular offering, and then chronic care. So you can see a hospital has very, very many opportunities in different specialized areas. But the main difference between hospital and the next level of sectors, which I'm going to talk about, is that these are short-term. You're not developing relationships with people in the hospital to the extent that you would in a long-term care setting or a retirement home setting. So let's go to the next slide. Retirement homes are very independent living for elderly or sometimes young people who just need oversight and perhaps are thirsty for a community type setting. So often you will see people that are living home alone, their family may live out of town, they're quite capable of taking care of themselves, they may even be driving still, and so they just really need a place to be with other folks and to have some oversight. So a retirement home is an opportunity for people to congregate into living in they have their own little spaces, but they would join together for meals. Most retirement homes will offer medication dispensing, and so the staff who work there are not necessarily RPNs. Mostly they could be a PSW who is certified to provide medication distribution. So the advantage to the client that's actually living in a retirement home is that they have oversight of their medication system. Housekeeping services is another perk of the retirement home. The resident that lives there will get a good housekeeping of their room and offer of bed changing and towels and cleaning and that sort of vein of services. So you can see that the retirement home sector would hire housekeepers. Meals is another great service of a retirement home. You get 3 very well-balanced meals and offerings of snacks. A lot of times a retirement home will offer self-serve snacks to the clients. So again, in a retirement home, we would have to have people who have the food service worker certificate or actually at least their food handler's certificate, which is a very short course compared to the food service worker. We do, in our retirement home at Vision, offer laundry and valet services, and that would be also offered at other retirement homes. And you see I put a $sign behind there because that service would actually have an extra cost, perhaps, mostly with personal laundry and valet, not necessarily your the sheets and stuff. We also offer bed checks, which is always something that could be a reassurance for family members, that somebody is going into their loved one's room and saying, hey, are you okay? Is everything all right? So they're not all alone. So sometimes when an elderly person is in an apartment all by themselves, the family can worry quite a bit. Bed checks are offered, and of course we ask for permission from the resident or the person that's living in that room. Is it okay if we check on you? It's their choice, really. Recreation and leisure is also offered to people in retirement homes where they can do exercise programs. We currently in our home have physiotherapy service included in the rent, and so it is really quite a nice step into living with the community and starting to make new friends in that environment while having the opportunity to have your privacy as well. Lots of opportunity for jobs in a retirement home sector, and the requirement for education is not quite as high as long-term care and hospital. Hospital, actually, new to hospital is PSWs, and they have different duties as well in the hospital setting, but PSWs have opportunities both hospitals, long-term care, and retirement home sector. Let's go to the next slide. So in a long-term care home, as I previously talked about at the beginning of this day, is a home for people who need that extra support because they're having problems either with their activities of daily living. Perhaps they have some dementia. Perhaps they have a habit of wandering or need safety issues. So the difference between long-term care home and hospital and retirement home is that there is nursing care at a level that is not as intense as a hospital level, but it is enough for the resident to be taken care of and to be safe. There's dietary and oversight of dietary with a dietitian. Long-term care homes, it's exactly the name of the word. It's long, relational, and it's home. Medical doctor and nurse practitioner is on staff or is hired or oversight of medical needs. So you really do develop a relationship with the doctor and the nurse practitioner that is working in the long-term care home, which is different than a retirement home because you would have to go to your doctor from a retirement home. And in the hospital, of course, you would have the hospitalist or your family doctor if they're allowed to come into the hospital. So we do have a dedicated medical doctor and nurse practitioner. Medications and treatments are fully supervised by our registered staff, and they also are very, very conscientious of vitals. So there's a set of vitals often taken by the registered staff as well. Continence care is really important in long-term care. Often people who, as they age, or people who are young and have accidents, perhaps where they can't walk anymore, do need assistance with continence care. And along with continence care is skin and wound care. So we want to make sure that everybody's skin stays healthy and that everyone feels clean in a dignified and private way. It's very, very important. Not the hospital as well, the nurses are trained to assist you in that way. The difference, I think, is perhaps that the relational part of that, because I'm there for a long, long time, I'm developing a trust relationship with my caregiver. Finally, we do offer end-of-life and palliative care in the long-term care home sector, very similar to the hospital sector and even to hospice, because what happens there is the long-term relationship, the staff become family and are wanting to stay with residents and assist them as they leave this world, and they provide lots of support for the family. So they become family, and palliative and end-of-life care becomes very important. Also, the nurse practitioner plays a vital role in keeping a resident that's in a long-term care home. You can imagine if you're there for 5 or 10 years and you're at end of life, you don't want to leave your home. It's wonderful to have a nurse practitioner on staff to help with that transition from life to death. Finally, physiotherapy, and it's kind of interesting how I listed all of those. But physiotherapy is a wonderful service that the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care has graciously assisted with the funding for in the most recent years, where we have a physiotherapist that works with the residents to rehabilitate and maintain their current abilities, which is very, very positive. Residents do look forward to working with physiotherapy and physiotherapy aids, walking and doing fine motor skill exercises and all kinds of different opportunities. We also are delighted to be the family, as I said before. So when we look at the scope of the health sector, there's everything from acute care and having treatment for your illnesses in the hospital sector. The main difference between a hospital, a retirement home, and long-term care home is that the retirement home and long-term care home are a home. They are an extended stay. There is a relationship with staff. There is a family-like home atmosphere. The hospital, a loving and caring environment, but for very short periods of time. And off you go to a different service provider if needed. So I think I have covered all of the differences. There's one more slide here to say thank you. Thank you for your attention and for everything. Have a good day.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Claudette. And so at this point, we'll pause for a moment for the next one, and we'll see everyone again at 2:30. Excellent, welcome back. So the next one is by me, actually, and I'll be talking about opening doors to new opportunities, the benefits of the long-term care or LTC co-op passport system. So first off, what this is about is it's speaking to a project that we've been working with the long-term care home sector on that was funded by the provincial government, which is really addressing this need identified within the sector of all of this HR training that's being applied to new staff and existing staff is really siloed. Each individual home is doing their own training based upon the needs and requirements of their particular organization. And what that, as a whole, it means then that you've got this redundancy of training. One person is being trained at one home, they then move on to another home and they're being retrained, then they're moving on to another home and being retrained for the same types of information. And it's a very variable rate in terms of the amount of training that's there. The government dictates the standards that everybody must achieve by, but each individual home is really interpreting those standards and training by themselves. So that's where this project came from as a whole, as the long-term care home sector came to us at Atlantic College, and we sought to come up with a solution thereof. And out of that was actually the long-term care staff and cooperative concept was born, which is this idea that the regional long-term care homes could come together, work together effectively as a unit in considering the problems with staffing. And as you can see at this particular session, you have a single booth representing all of the regional long-term care homes. That's this realization that the problems of one home are the same as the problems across various homes. And that's where we came from. So what is the HR orientation micro-credential training? So if you're a new employee going into a role at a long-term care home, or you're moving to a new home, you have to go through this standard orientation training. If you've ever watched The Office, that's that initial training that everybody's got to go through and we'll make jokes about. Effectively, this is a mandatory training that's required to start the role in the LTC, and its topics are based upon government mandates and the requirements of that particular home. It's that orientation to cover that base level and set the standard that everybody is expected to operate under. It also encompasses different training for different roles. You've got your base set of training that's required to work in the home, and then these additional subsets, which may be specific to the role itself. It may be PSW, it may be in the food service area, it may be in maintenance, and so you've got all these different elements that are tacked on top of it. The main thing as a person who's starting in this role is a realization that you can't start on the floor until you've completed this training, okay? I'm excited, I'm starting a new job. This is why I want to do, okay, I gotta sit down and I gotta go through all this training. You go through that training, and then eventually at some point you may move on to another home. I get to do this again, I get to do this again, I get to do this again. Which costs, it takes up your time, but also costs the homes an awful lot of time, energy, and investment, because this redundant training is being done over and over again. Examples of the training that's required. So what kind of training is this HR orientation training that you have to take? Well, typically they're going to be things like documentation, how to deal with documentation within the home, safety procedures, how to use specific equipment that's required in the home, ethics in long-term care, considering what is it like to work in a long-term care home, and what is the standard that you need to operate under. Client-centered care, health and safety, immunizations, I can go on, and infection control. It's really this training is the stuff that's required that in order for the clients to feel that there's a level of standard across the various homes, and for your coworkers to know that you all are operating at the same level. Example, health and safety. Everybody knows. And infection control. You want to make sure that your coworkers understand and we're operating at the same bar. So that's the purpose of that. Next slide, please. So how does that happen? Okay, so the old way of doing this training, which is kind of the traditional siloed approach, is every single home interprets the legislation and the requirements for training in their own special sort of way. They build their training modules, they build their training sessions. It could be 1 to 4 days of training within the home. You'll be sitting in a classroom with working with a binder of documents. I've heard stories of binders this big that get plopped on your desk, and you get to go through it, you get to sign off on it, you get to go through it, you get to sign off on it, and you're supposed to absorb that stuff and get the information that you need to be effective in the home. That's not necessarily all the case. If you don't get what you need from that training and there's remediation required, you get to do it again. If you move to a new job in long-term care, you get to do it again, which is costly for the homes, takes a lot of resources and planning in order to get people there, and it takes you away from what you were really hoping to do, which is start your job. Next slide, please, Chris. So what's the solution? This is where we were really trying to focus on, and it's what we consider the new way, which is a portable and centralized HR training passport. And this is based upon the micro-credential concept that some of the earlier speakers spoke to, and that's kind of been pervasive through, which are these kind of discrete bite-sized units of training that are kind of all modular that you can stick together to effectively create a training passport. So what we've done under this project with the long-term care homes is work together to kind of come up with what are those consensus training elements that everybody needs to have that's universal across the board, depending upon home 1, home 2, home 3, home 4, home 5, and we created the micro-credentials, discrete units for each of these. The beauty of working together under a cooperative to kind of come up with this concept really means that everybody recognizes it's set a bar that everybody needs to achieve in order to make their way through to work within the long-term care environment. So this new passport system broke it into these micro-credential modules, which are take what you need for your role and location. So if you're a new employee going into a long-term care home, they're going to give you a list of micro-credentials that are specific to the role and to that home that you need to achieve in order to work your way in there. If you already have had that training before, you get to say, check, 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 I have it, here's the evidence that I have it, and so you don't have to necessarily take that training again, which means that you get to go on the floor and start your role. The training itself are at your own pace online modules. So these are online learning, very short. So I spoke earlier about how that training will typically take 1 to 4 days, depending upon the home and the agency. I've actually even heard of some that take 2 weeks, but you know, I don't know how that works. These are a total of about 8.5 to 9.5 hours for someone who's never done them before. They're independent, discrete units of online learning that you work your way through at your own pace. Once you've completed those and it's been submitted, then the orientation records are centralized via a passport. So this sits in a web portal to a centralized system, and every single long-term care home that you then give permission to share your training record with will see what micro-credentials you have done, what you are still lacking in, and then determine what you still need to do. You take that passport to the new job. That record set of training is yours. It tells you when the expiry date is on that training and when you might have to retake it. It's all there and available for you. And you get credit for what you know, in the sense of, if you've been working in long-term care for 20 years, you know the system right through and through. You get to go straight to the assessment side and demonstrate that you actually do know what you're saying. Come on in, feel free to grab some food, and you get credit for what you know in that sense, because it's a faster way through. The point is not necessarily to make sure everybody has seen this stuff. It's more competency. Does everybody have the requirements, have satisfied the requirements, and are competent in what the point is of that training? Start work faster. If you leave one long-term care home and move over to another one, then and you have credit for what you've already done, you can move on to the floor. Next slide, please. So how does that look? If you're starting a new role in long-term care, it's fairly simple. The home checklist component is a listing of all the micro-credentials required for a particular home and a particular role. And that's a template, effectively, of what's required. You're provided that when you were hired on. Then you go to the online portal. You learn what you need through the online modules, and there's some hands-on elements of that provided at the home. But you know, those are details thereof. And then you receive your badges. Upon completion of that training, you will get these individual badges for each individual units. And that is really the transition from what you need to what is a certification you require for that home. Next slide, please. And then from that, so you've received these badges, which effectively are evidence that you have completed the little individual training modules. You log into the web portal associated with the staffing cooperative. You enter your badges in there, and it effectively creates almost like a report card, which is, have you taken that training, passed that training, have you demonstrated that capacity, that competency, that means that you absorbed what was needed to absorb from it, and you're effectively created a summary per role as to what training you have and what you lack. That, you then click that submit it to my employer, because you've shared these records with the employer. It moves its way over to the employer, and then the employer gets that synopsis which says this individual staff has received all the training that they need, let's get them onto the floor. So you can envision this way, is you've had an interview at a long-term care home, and you're saying, I'm interested in this particular role. And they say, when can I start? And the question is, well, why don't you share your passport with me? We'll take a look at what you have and what you need. You've got everything, you can start on Monday. That's the type of opportunity that this provides in terms of giving you the capacity to move between homes. And you can also appreciate that on the long-term care home side, as you heard from one of Claudette's talks, that it's a regulated sector. There's a lot of inspection required, there's a lot of auditing of training. For what reason? Very good reasons, because you are accountable to the clients that are working in the home, that you're trained and doing an excellent job. You're accountable to yourself because you want to make sure that you know what you need to do, and such that you're well equipped to do your role, and you're accountable to the other staff in the home. You want to be able to count on that the person working next to you that's wearing their N95 mask is trained and knows what they're doing when they're wearing that. And that's what this does for you as an individual, and also the long-term care home. Because when the government comes in and doing their inspections and they want an audit of that, these records are centralized, which means it's a nice, simple process for HR managers to be able to pull up that record, identify that everybody is in compliance, and be able to provide that to the ministry. So it really is kind of a win-win situation, in the sense of you as an employee coming into long-term care have a nice, easy way of getting to where you need to go. And as an HR manager in a long-term care home as well, you have access to standardized information that sets a consistent bar across the sector, and that you can audit that and know that you're in compliance. Last slide, please. And that's really where this project is at this point, and I hope that really what we've seen are those benefits on either side, whether you're the new employee, or someone who's a student moving into enrolled in long-term care and looking to get this training through your educator, such that you're able to get on the floor faster, or if you're an HR manager in long-term care who's really got to demonstrate compliance with all the audits that are required to support that sector. If you'd like to learn more, please go to the LTC orientation, so lambtoncollege.ca/LTC orientation. This is the kind of information and access page provided by the Sarnia Lambton Long-Term Care Staffing Cooperative, this collection of long-term care homes within the region. And that should give you information on what the whole cooperative is, how it works, how to move into this standardized training, and the opportunities for this in the future. We're happy to chat anytime if anybody's got any questions afterwards, and then we can go from there. At that point, thank you, and then we'll return in a couple minutes for the next talk. And welcome back. The next speaker is Heather Martin, and she'll be speaking to us on the future looks bright, prospects for the long-term care sector. Good morning, Heather.
Thanks, Sandy, and welcome everyone to this later in the afternoon session. I'm pleased to say that after many decades of being in long-term care, although not for necessarily the right reason, but the pandemic did bring highlight to the fact that long-term care has been neglected in our healthcare system, and we're more than aware that we were just on a glass pedestal, and the pandemic certainly brought that to light as we came somewhat crashing down and struggled for that first year in 2020. And as many people know, it's very difficult when you start to talk about doing something that it was just a couple of years ago, but you have to say a couple of years ago plus 2 or 3. So a lot of our memories go back to pre-pandemic, where we had advocated for a long time for our sector, and we knew that we were in desperate need of additional support in order to bring proper care and service to our residents. So just a little bit of background. Today in Ontario there are 627 homes. 58% are privately owned, and 24% are nonprofit, and 16 are the municipal homes. Years ago they brought together the legislation that brought the for-profit, not-for-profit, and municipal homes together under one Long-Term Care Home Act. There are more than 115,000 people currently living in our homes. And the province has announced a 25% increase in funding for the additional frontline staff. 115,000. So if you start looking at those numbers, they're significant. So in addition to knowing that we were going to be doing this increase in staffing in the long-term care homes, there are 30,000 older nursing home beds that are slated for redevelopment, and the target date for those, most of them, is 2025. Highly unrealistic, but great efforts are being put forward at this time to get those done. It varies depending on which government you speak to, but there are, at most, I believe the top number is about 30,000 new beds to be built. Right now under Doug Ford, they're talking about 15,000 beds. Those are now accelerating their builds, hopefully sooner than later. We have currently about 40,000 people in Ontario waiting for placement in long-term care. Those people are living inappropriately in other locations, many of them as alternate level of care patients in hospitals, some struggling to live on their own at home, and others with family members who are not coping well with that situation. So based on the future of long-term care, the estimated nursing positions to provide care, these numbers are hard, and if you're following the news in the last couple of weeks, the press is trying to get Doug Ford to release how many people he thinks it's going to take to staff these new beds and increase our level of care. These are numbers I've found, and I can't hang my hat on total reliability, but they seem reasonable to me. 329 registered nurses, 3,608 registered practical nurses, and just about 20,000 PSWs. So, and those are all full-time positions. In long-term care, being a 24-hour, 7 days a week operation, when we talk full-time equivalents, you cannot have just full-time employees. In order to staff our buildings on weekends, 24 hours a day, and meeting the union contracts of weekends off and all the other obligations, many of these are split pretty close to a 50-50 of full-time and then part-time staff. So you can almost double those numbers with the number of people that are required in the sector over the course of the next 2 to 3 years. Pretty phenomenal numbers. Next. Could say thank you. I think to add a little bit to that though, programs like the Lambton College micro-credentialing program that allows people to work at the speed and at the pace that they're able to, given their life experiences and where they are, it is essential that we respect the ability for people to come into our workforce. And we have an obligation as the employer to not rely on others to do this for us. It's up to us to find the solutions. And today is an example of how we're doing that. So working closely with Lambton College on a variety of different programs, supporting the school system in bringing up our young PSWs that are coming out of grade 11 and grade 12 that see a career in the future. So there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of work to be done, but we have to take that responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. So we'll adjourn till 3:10 when we'll be having the last session for the day. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Welcome back. And for the last session of today, we have Jennifer Cheyenne speaking to, there are many ways to become a PSW. Earn your PSW certificate from your local school board. Jennifer?
Thank you.
Hello.
So again, my name is Jennifer, and I work with the Lambton Kent District School Board. I am a registered nurse myself, and I also have my Bachelor of Education. I teach the PSW program. We have 2 sites, actually, with the Lambton Kent District School Board that teaches PSW. One being at Alexander Mackenzie Secondary School, as well as Wallaceburg District Secondary School. So the program's been running for, I think, close to 17 years now. I have been myself teaching it for the past 3, and it has fascinated me how many people don't actually know that it exists. So students can start taking the healthcare courses that go towards their PSW program in grade 11. Most of the students that are in the full program, those start in their grade 12 year. We also take high school graduates, provided that they're under the age of 21. But if they are still in their grade 12 year, the really neat thing about this program is they can earn credits towards their high school diploma at the same time as graduating with a certificate in PSW and can enter the workforce immediately upon graduation. So it's a pretty amazing program. The day school program, you can go to the next slide, sorry. The day school program starts in semester 1, and we have in-class courses. So again, we have grade 11 healthcare and anatomy. We do grade 12 child development and gerontology, and grade 12 healthcare, as well as skills. So we do, the classrooms have labs in the classroom. We do a lot of theory and hands-on practice skills before the students go out into their clinical placements. Semester 2, they have their clinical or co-op placement. So they get over 440 hours in a hands-on experience working alongside a full-time PSW. So it's a really unique opportunity. They get a lot of really amazing experiences, and I would say over 95% of the time they're offered jobs before they graduate, which is really, really great. So all of this, if they were earning credits towards their high school diploma, would give them 7 credits total, which is a good chunk in their grade 12 year. You can go to the next slide. So through the high school program, we have a program called SHSM, that's the acronym. It stands for Specialist High Skills Major. And through the health and wellness section under SHSM, they get special certifications. They get their first aid CPR training with a healthcare focus. They get to do gentle persuasive approach, which is working with clients who have dementia. And they will already have these certifications before they even go into placement, which look really great on a resume, but that also gives them a red seal on their diploma with a specialized high skills major in health and wellness on their high school diploma. Go to the next slide. So our programs follow the Ontario Ministry of Education expectations, the Ministry of Colleges and Universities 14 vocational learning outcomes, and the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care industry standards. We go through a rigorous quality assurance process, and we just recently were awarded the highest level of certification through there, which gives us 3 years before we get assessed again, which was really fantastic and outstanding. So actually, Lisa, who is the teacher in Wallaceburg, and I both sit on the quality assurance committee as well. So we have the opportunities to go out to other school boards and see how their programs are run, as well as ensuring that they're meeting the standards. So students will receive a personal support worker certificate upon successful completion of the program. And as I mentioned, graduates have 95%. I would say it's even higher in Sarnia-Lambton over the last few years, higher rate immediately following graduation. So for contacts and to apply, again, it is students eligible who are in their grade 12 year. They can apply from any school in Lambton County, either with the Lambton Kent District School Board, but they can also be with the Catholic Board as well. And depending on where they are living, the Sarnia site is at Alexander Mackenzie Secondary School, and I would be the contact there. And then for Wellsburg District Secondary School, it's Lisa Zandbergen, and her contact information is there. You can go directly to the school website as well and apply to the program through our website. And then questions. I kind of flew through that. So if anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask. No? Okay. Thank you very much for the opportunity and sharing about our program.
Thank you, Jennifer. And so that closes out our sessions for today. I hope that this was a reasonable opportunity, that you had the chance to learn about the various elements available and opportunities available to you in long-term care. In particular, the realization that the careers in long-term care are more than just focused on care careers, PSW, nursing, and the rest, but there's also this great need in all the various other elements of long-term care: maintenance, culinary, dietitians, rec therapy, administration, etc. So there's more to long-term opportunities in long-term care than just care opportunities. As well, I hope you've been able to walk away with the realization that there's opportunities for growth in working in long-term care, whether it be as a sector as a whole or as an individual through such flexible type programming that Lambton College may have to offer, or the long-term care homes themselves by partnerships through such organizations as Lambton College in order to upskill and develop your careers while you're working. I think, I hope you've also seen some of the innovation that's happening between the long-term care sector as they unify under a cooperative type structure and speak as a voice as opposed to individual silos and homes in order to really solve some of the big problems within the sector, such as the HR orientation passport, which really sets a bar, sets a standard for everybody, that provides confidence for everyone who works in there and the clients and the families of those who are within it. I hope you also that some of you here have had the opportunity to go downstairs and take a look at the job fair that's happening down there and seeing the opportunities that are available to you in the Sarnia-Lambton area, as well as in the long-term care sector within the Sarnia-Lambton area. And I think that was really our ultimate goal out of this whole project and this forum that's available. In the future, you'll see on the Sarnia-Lambton Long-Term Care Staffing Cooperative YouTube channel, we'll be posting the videos from these sessions for anybody who would like to share them or take a look at them and get a bit of information, as well as some other resources that we'll make available to people. Thank you very much for your time, and we hope to see you in the long-term care sector or at Lambton College in any one of our many programs. All right, thanks so much. Bye.